Easy. Okay, David Cameron has decided to grace us with his presence once again and break his rather dignified silence. He's got a book coming out and he's making various TV interviews. Now, of course, David Cameron will be remembered by many for being the man who unleashed chaos on the country. For others, he was a fairly good Prime Minister. Now, don't get your baseball bats out all at once, but I actually fall into that latter category. I do think that, by and large, he was a fairly good Prime Minister. I think that he had a lot of good ideas, a lot of good policies that he tried to implement, but the biggest problem with David Cameron was, of course, Nick Clegg. Everything that Cameron tried to implement, Nick Clegg blocked it, and that just became a familiar pattern. Cameron came up with an idea, Clegg blocked it, and it just went on and on and on like that. It was just like a big lead weight hanging off his dick, really. And then that brings us to 2015, because he only lasted, of course, one more year. And unfortunately, that out of his 6-year tenure as Prime Minister, he only really got 1 year in order to shine on his own right. And he did promise us the referendum all through his first 5 years. And when he won his own majority, he did deliver on that promise and held the referendum. And as I've said before and explained in a previous video, that what sealed the envelope for me to vote for Brexit was David Cameron's attempt to go to Brussels at the beginning of 2016 and to renegotiate our position in the European Union, to get a better deal, to get some better terms, if you like, for us. And my eyes were watching very closely on what he was doing then, because it was you could say that my vote was in the envelope already, but the envelope wasn't sealed yet. And when David Cameron came back with his tail between his legs after failing to get anything out of the EU, that was what sealed the envelope. But it's also the point where I lost my respect for him, because what he tried to do is, instead of being honest with the people that he'd managed to achieve jack shit, what he did is he used a car salesman-like pitch in order to sell it to the public that he'd managed to achieve this great new position for Britain inside the EU, that he'd managed to get concessions on free movement of people. But of course it was a lie. We could all see with our own eyes that he'd got nothing. And let's be honest, who believes what a car salesman says, eh? You've got to be pretty damn stupid, haven't you, to believe what a car salesman said. And that is, of course, where he lost my respect. And I think it's at the point where a lot of the country decided that enough was enough. That the EU are... They have their stance that you either like what we are and you like the direction that we're taking in the future, or you don't. If you don't, then leave. There is no negotiation, there is no reform. That is what it is. Take it or leave it. That's their attitude. And unfortunately, you cannot do negotiations with businesses or organisations with an attitude like that. It's completely impossible. The best thing to do is to give it a shot, which he did, which I have respect for. But you've got to admit when you fail. That is the mark of a great man to me, is when they are prepared to accept and admit when they fail. And David Cameron didn't do that. And then, of course, there's a lot of criticism about him stepping down as Prime Minister the day after the vote to leave. But I actually, again, had a bit of respect for that, because I think that it was really the only thing that he could do. He'd thrown his lot into campaigning to remain, and he'd failed on that. I think the only dignified thing he could do was to stand down. I think to carry on would have just been untenable. And I think it's very wrong for people like Danny Dyer to come out with the nasty things that he's like, where is the geezer? He did, I think, the only decent thing that he could do. And what he's done now since then is he has really kept a dignified silence, I think. He hasn't joined the likes of Tony Blair and John Major and a lot of the other hangers-on to those people. But now, I think he's in danger of doing just that, because this book, and I won't be buying it, but what I can understand from it is that he's laid into Boris Johnson, and he's also laid into his one-time best friend Michael Gove, and called him a Farageist populist. Well, Michael Gove, no, he's not. Michael Gove is a liberal Conservative MP. He may be a Brexiteer, but he's certainly not a hardliner. He voted for and campaigned for the withdrawal agreement, which is, of course, Brexit in name only, colony status, surrender treaty. So I don't buy into that one. I think David Cameron really is now disgracing himself, if this is to be true. And he's undoing the decent thing that he's done over the past 3 years since the referendum, and he is in danger of making himself look like a sore loser, like Blair, Major, and Adonis and Nick Clegg, and there's a list of them, isn't there now? So, Dave, I'd say better to stay silent, mate. It's better to quit while you're ahead. Unfortunately for him, he managed to quit just after he lost that aheadness. But I think what he's doing now is if he's laying into Boris Johnson and slagging him off and Michael Gove and a lot of the others, I think that is very, very bad form. And that's my opinion on David Cameron. If you disagree with that, which there's probably some of you will do, that's okay, because I can accept a differing opinion to my own. Thanks for watching. Until next time, easy.